There is scepticism about recruitment agencies on both sides, from the employers and from the candidates. In our experience in Cortex, that's very rare, and our testimonies will show that. We appreciate clients have several issues with recruitment agencies, and they often come to us when they've had a poor service or they've had the wrong kind of candidates come through. They've been at the receiving end of a scattergun approach. That wastes everyone's time. So unfortunately, that does happen in that situation between a recruitment agency and an employer. On the candidate side, the feedback we're getting is that they don't get feedback themselves throughout the whole process. So they're felt in the cold, they're not sure what's going on, they feel ill-prepared, and the whole thing just falls down. Because we adhere to our industry best practice, code of conduct, we explain what our expectations are for the candidate and the employer. So we alleviate those problems in the rare instances that they do actually occur. But it isn't a perfect model, these things do happen. Recruiters primarily are seeking hard skills. Can someone program in certain packages and softwares and hardware? The other consideration that perhaps is overlooked is, will they fit into that organisation? What's the whole package that's being offered? If they're looking for high calibre candidates, they need to make a high calibre offer. So they can't just be looking for a technical skill. It does depend on the role, of course, but there's a lot more that goes along with a brief that we're given by a recruiter. So they will be looking for cultural fit, they'll be looking for the ability to progress within that organisation, and one key skill that is often looked for is interpersonal skills, especially with consultancy roles, that kind of thing, and that is severely lacking worldwide. So there are issues where beyond technical skills, recruiters really need to address exactly what they're looking for in the person that's going to be sitting opposite them. For recruiters to maximise the relationship with one or more suppliers, be they agencies or job boards, they need to remove any obstacles or hindrances to those processes that enable a candidate to find a job with them, if that makes sense. So, for example, in a perfect world, an employer would be very transparent about what the job involves. Chances are they're not going to give warts and all account of what the job involves. So to expect that is unrealistic, but certainly to reduce the time between receiving a CV to making an interview to making an offer, because time kills this process dead. So speed to hire is very, very key. So when we speak with recruiters, we explain our expectations of how we see the process going over what time frame, and if it fits in with their time frame, the chances go up of success. If it is for a software consultant, let's say, they will be client-facing. So they will need evidence of client-facing skills. And it comes back to interpersonal skills, building rapport, good listening, being able to understand the challenge faced by that client and then translate it back to the IT team in order to deliver. So that's a skill that can not be taught really, and can only be demonstrated through experience. We work on challenging projects at Cortex IT Recruitment, and this could be where time is of the essence. I'll give you an example where there's a shortfall, where they've set out to hire 5 IT people and they've missed out by 1 or 2, and they need all 5 to start within 2 weeks. Luckily, we have a talent pool of people that we can dip into, because we're the sister firm of the Graduate Recruitment Bureau, who are the leading graduate recruitment agency for STEM graduates. So we're actually able to track their graduates through their career history and pick off the ones that are suitable for the role. And in many cases, if not all, they're passive job seekers. So we're actually able to introduce the right candidate through to them. So where there are challenges, we do tend to overcome them. However, if we are up against direct applicants, that's something out of our control. So occasionally we'll lose out to a direct applicant making that application. Ultimately, we've played a part in that process, and if we don't succeed in that case, we're often invited for future projects. So time can be a challenging issue. If the actual requirement for the role isn't something we can deliver, we'll be honest and say, you're better off with this recruiter, or have you heard of this job site? So we won't put ourselves in those situations very often. But we do have an advantage, to be honest, with this database, because we're able to introduce candidates that aren't using other job boards, aren't using LinkedIn so much, so we don't have to rely on that response, and that creates a time gap. So where time's concerned, we do deliver. What employers and candidates can get wrong when they're dealing with recruitment agencies is anything that hinders or creates obstacles for the actual process to move forward. And I alluded to this before, but I can expand on that. Now, to speak to a candidate, you're expecting them to be honest with their qualifications, their skills, and we do background checks to make sure that's correct. But they may not be so honest about other interviews they're going for, other intentions, other things going on in their life. So we can only work on what we're given. To expect a totally honest and transparent communication from candidates is probably unrealistic. At the end of the day, they're in control of their career, and they may only tell us so much. So by getting as much information from them as possible enables us to do a good job for them. For the employers, it's where we haven't got a detailed enough brief. Occasionally they'll give us very minimal information, and it's not enough to find them the right kind of person. So first of all, a detailed brief. If we don't get that, or any agency for that matter, they're not really going to do a good job. And secondly, that there is buy-in from all levels within that organisation. Someone senior may have to sign that off. If they're not involved until the last minute, things can change there. So that's number 2, buy-in and commitment. And number 3, an agreed timescale. Because in the tech job market, it's very competitive, very fast moving, and people are going for more than one job interview, of course. So if they do want to secure that person, they do have to move quickly. Recruiting high caliber tech candidates is tricky in this particular job market. Many recruiters will attempt to do it themselves, but underestimate the time and money it can take. An advert on their own site, an advert with a niche job board, well written, at the right time, with the right salary, the right benefits, can get the right person. It does happen. However, the cons are the time involved in processing those applications. Well, there's 2 scenarios: processing thousands of applications, or not processing any applications. The point is, there's no guarantee that you're going to find that person. There's more of a guarantee if you use a recruitment consultant, because they're only paid on results. The other benefit of, or rather the con of, direct recruitment is you haven't got succession planning as much covered unless you have trusted suppliers who are there in your corner, knowing what you want now but also in the future. Particularly if you don't have your own in-house recruitment team. That's a really valuable partnership to have. We do get situations where clients have attempted themselves and failed, and that is very common. Of course, many companies will try to do it themselves, but many of our clients use us year in, year out, because we know what they want and we've delivered. So you may pay slightly more for that, but in the long haul, in terms of succession planning and retention rates, it's worth the investment, we believe. Candidates can let themselves down at various stages of the process of applying for a job. First impressions count, so a CV and a covering letter is so important. It's a sales document ultimately. And many tech candidates may be out of practice, maybe never had feedback as to why they were unsuccessful when it could have been about that first impression that wasn't created. So we spend a lot of time with candidates about getting their CV spot on. Now, what we will do, we will look at their strengths, of course, but also try and match it with the job that they're applying for, so it makes sense to the selector, because to stand out is imperative. So the first impression they're making is going to be that the recruiter's going to pick up the phone and want to interview that person straight away. So there's various techniques of getting a CV read. The next step, interviews, assessment centres, all the way up to job offer, we will hold our hand every step of the way, because it's very, very important to continue how you present yourselves at the very first instance throughout the whole process in order to secure the job. This depends on the company by and large. If they have their own in-house recruitment team, we'll be dealing with in-house HR teams. By and large, we're dealing with line managers, and in some cases it may involve HR at the offer stage. So it really does depend on the process for that particular client. Ultimately, we're not trying to hinder the process, so if it involves going to HR first to get sign off and then to line manager, we'll do that. When Cortex have successfully placed a candidate with a recruiter, the chances are, due to the high amount of churn in this market, there will be other opportunities. So we take the long view. Beyond that placement, we'll look at other placements within the IT department, now, in the medium term and the long term. We say that because we have the confidence that we can deliver, because we're actually able to track graduates when they leave university, and then with 2, 3, 4, 5 years experience, we're actually able to introduce these candidates. So we can look ahead and actually plan ahead by getting the cream of the crop each year and tracking them throughout their first stages of their career. So they benefit immensely and rely on us to provide that talent pipeline. I think what you're doing now, bringing different stakeholders in the process together to talk about ways to improve this model, is a great start in the right direction. I think there still is a perception about how agencies will act and behave, and from their side there's also a perception of how recruiters themselves may not live up to expectations. So trying to create a code of conduct, best practice, might help, and people have to sign up to that, which is what the REC do, which we're members of. So I think a code of conduct along those lines might flush out those that are less serious about professionalising their business. Personally, I've seen it happen before in other industries, so I think it could work. If we look at social media and how a good or a bad service can be amplified, so a hotel on TripAdvisor, an electrician on Checkatrade, there are those sites now. So organisations like Glassdoor or Review Centre are a good way for recruiters, candidates and others involved in the process to begin to see who's being professional or not. So there are opportunities there for good companies to shine and others to suffer with negative word of mouth. So it's kind of happening already without any of our involvement through the help of social media. So raising awareness of where people can post particular comments about IT recruitment may be a good start.